All right, we're back at it here on a Friday. It's VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It's time for the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Of course, we're going back to basics here on VSiN, taking a step back, kind of educating the audience. Some of you are new to betting. We want to make sure that you have your ground, your basics when it comes to betting 101. So that's what we do here. The author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum, and he joins us. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Patrick, it's great to be with you. Yeah, we've had a great first week here, and we're going to talk about a lot of prop betting overall. So we'll do a quick recap of the week, and then dive into props. I'm super excited to have Matt Manocherian on today. We've had a lot of movement across the market. So really deep dive into prop betting today with a specific focus on the NFL draft.
You nailed it, Josh. We're going to get into props, propositions coming up in just a bit. With the draft coming up, there's opportunities to make money. We'll tell you how with the props. But I thought it might be a good place to start here as we get through our first week. Let's go back to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, of course, and kind of recap the main points, the main bullet points that came out of each day. On Monday, we started with the season win totals. There's one thing you'd like the audience, Josh, to know about season win totals. It would be
I think it would be basically following juice movement across the market, because when you see juice agreement, remember the juice is that basically the price on every bet that the odds makers are forcing you to pay. You may see the same win total across the board where we talked about the Colts. Their win total was 8.5 at every book, but where's the juice at each book? Anytime you see that juice moving toward the same direction where it's, minus 120, minus 130, it's juiced up, making you pay a higher price. That's letting you know that that's kind of the side with some liability. So look across the market, see where the agreement is. Anytime there's agreement, that's telling you kind of no matter where the book is, sharps are kind of leaning the same way. And of course, look at strength of schedule. Try to go through each game, all 16 games. Look at some projected wins based on that. Lean on stability versus instability. Don't fall into the trap of the media hype. And of course, remember that the public is going to lean overs with a lot of these win totals, so it does create some value on taking unders.
great. Perfect, Josh. Tuesday, we really went back to the basics. What's a point spread, a money line, and a total?
Yeah, so this one is really the kind of the most important one overall. It might seem like it's not a big deal, but you got to get your fundamentals in order first. So remember, when you're betting sports, there are different types of bets overall. So obviously, the most important one would be the spread, because the spread is kind of the most popular bet, and it's really suited for sports like football and basketball. It's the point spread, where the odds makers are taking away points from the favorite, giving them to the dog, so that way they can level the playing field and kind of make it kind of an easier or a more level playing field bet overall. But then you got the money line, who's going to win the game straight up, based on paying a higher price for a favorite, lower price for a dog. And then you can bet on the total. The total is the combined amount of points scored by both teams. Add them up, and you can take the over or the under. And obviously, there are different situations here, but you're looking at things like pace, scoring. You can look at the weather or officials. A lot goes into it, but the basic thing is know what bet types are available to you. And remember, money line is more baseball, hockey, spread, basketball, football. Totals are all sports, but more important or more popular in those high scoring sports like football and basketball.
Wednesday, we tackled the ever mysterious power ratings.
Yeah, so power ratings, that was a great show we did. And basically, power ratings are subjective. So there's no one power rating that's universal. Different sharp bettors come up with different power ratings overall. And what they're trying to do is basically rank all the teams from the strongest teams down to the weakest teams. And then you're going to look at different things like specific players, returning starters, ranking each positional group. But I think the big key there is if you can set good power ratings, you can then use them to create your own lines. So maybe you have a team, on average, a team that's like a 100 is your best team. Maybe a team that's 50 is low. You can basically take a 98 and a 95. Technically, the odds should be 3 points. You adjust for home field. You can then compare your power ranking odds to the odds makers and look for discrepancies. And again, don't be worried. Everyone can get in. It's daunting at first, but power ratings are a huge help, especially pros really lean on them.
And then, of course, yesterday, Jonathan and Josh tackled how to bet on golf. You can go to vsin.com and find that show. You want to bet on golf? The boys did a great job with that. Okay. Again, it's vsin.com. As we welcome you in, it is the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Hope you're having a great Friday. I'm Patrick, live in Vegas. The author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum, of course. The daily newsletter. If you're not signed up, Josh is a part of that as well. Just go to vsin.com, enter your email address. It's completely free. As a matter of fact, everything's free right now. We're just giving you the house. You can go to vsin.com right now, become an insider for free. But again, Josh Applebaum also can be found on Twitter at Josh_insights. Okay. The main lesson today, we're going to try to accomplish by the end of this hour. You're going to know everything you need to know about propositional betting. So let's start there, Josh. A prop, what is it?
Yeah, so a lot of bettors hear the word prop, and you may think you have a pretty good idea about it, and it's pretty simple overall. A prop is basically short for a propositional bet. It's also known kind of as an exotic. You hear prop bets or props. Remember, it's all about the terminology. It's the same exact thing, a prop bet or a prop. You'll hear prop more often. Just that's kind of the word that most bettors use. But basically, you're looking at any kind of bet that is outside of the conventional spread, money line, or over under, and it's really not tied to the outcome of the game. So it's kind of a different way to bet on a game. Maybe you crunch the numbers for a specific game and you don't come up with an edge either way, but you see an edge on a specific player. Player props in general have really become more and more popular over the years, kind of with the rise of daily fantasy. Instead of having to bet on a team, you're betting on a specific player. So the public really loves betting props, and there are some great opportunities out there. We talk about, Patrick, really the time of year where props really explode is the Super Bowl, because betting props on the Super Bowl are huge. You can bet novelty props, entertainment props. What color of the will the Gatorade be that's dumped on the head coach? Different odds for different colors. How long will the national anthem be? But props are available pretty much all year long. And kind of your most popular props are your player props, specifically on sports like football. So, for example, every Sunday the odds makers will post over unders on all the major offensive players. So Aaron Rodgers, maybe the Packers are playing your Detroit Lions, Patrick, on Sunday, and the odds makers release an over under on Aaron Rodgers passing yards at 325 and a half. Maybe you don't see an edge on the game, laying the spread or the total on that game, but you like Aaron Rodgers to go over, maybe because the defense of the Lions isn't very good, or there's an advantage with an injury or a matchup. So you can look at specific players, and you can also look at season-long props, because before the season starts, the odds makers will also hang, how many passing yards will Rodgers have for the entire season. Maybe it's 4,200 and a half. You could go over or under. You look at baseball. Home run props. How many home runs will Mike Trout hit this year? They might set it at 35 and a half. You could then take the over or the under. So we're really going to focus on the NFL draft today. But just know that prop bets give you another option. You don't have to focus on just the conventional spread, money line, or over under. You can look at specific players or specific situations across pretty much all sports.
Yeah, and don't worry, Jacob did a great job with some examples tying props to the draft, which we're going to get to in just a little bit here. But one of the things we're trying to do on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is help you with the vernacular. It's not just to sound cool when talking about betting, it's to really conceptualize what you're talking about, the syntax of sports lingo. Really. So when you hear an exotic, that's a prop. When you hear proposition, that's a prop. They're all the same thing. It's a bet outside the conventional spread, money line, or total. That's what a prop is. It's also something, and I want to start here with who bets props, because when your buddy flies to Vegas and he comes back and he has a ticket in his hand on the Detroit Lions to win a Super Bowl, that's a prop bet, right, Josh? So let's talk about professionals and their approach to prop betting, right? Because both amateurs and pros bet props, just sometimes a little differently.
You're exactly right, Patrick. And I think that's a really important distinction, because, these prop bets, propositional bets, just props in general, again, vernacular, all the same thing. They are available to everyone, but I think, what we call pro bettors or wise guys or sharps, they might approach them quite a bit differently than an average Joe bettor or a casual bettor. So I think the big thing, if you take a step back just in general, this isn't, cut and dry for every single prop. But generally speaking, you do see the public lean on a lot of overs and a lot of yeses. And that
Yep.
comes back to kind of the psychological bias of, if you're an average Joe bettor, which we all are and we all started as, and our goal is always to get sharper, but you're going to psychologically be biased just when you're betting a total to want to go over, because in your head, it's going to be more fun to root for more points, more scoring. You also look at a yes. It's kind of you're psychologically biased toward wanting to bet yes over no, and you really want to get plus money as well, because if you look at a lot of these props, if you see a prop that's minus 1,000, you got to lay 1,000 to win 100, or plus 1,000, you only have to put down 100 and you could win 1,000. There's a huge psychological bias toward the betting public to want to bet these big plus money payout props. And again, sometimes you hit them, it can be a great hit. You can win a lot of money, but you got to remember that once you get in the habit of thinking get rich quick and really isolating, like, you want to look at the prop specifically on its own. You don't want to let the price of the prop talk you into a bet, betting an over, betting a yes, bet it, wanting to get a big payout overall, kind of like a parlay. You want to turn a little bit of money into a lot of money. But overall, I think, just knowing that public leans a lot of overs, yeses, plus money. A lot of sharp bettors lean on a lot of nos and a lot of unders, and laying maybe a minus 200, a minus 300, nothing crazy, but there's a little more value for that in general. So you always gotta keep that in mind, and also keep an eye out, Patrick. For this is my favorite. Be wary of one-sided props. You'll see some props that are basically, if it's a yes or no, they only give you the yes, and maybe it's plus 2,000, a huge payout. Just always be wary when you only have one option. The books are kind of roping you into it, and that's just a scary proposition in
Uh,
general.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Great job, Jacob, with the graphics. Remember, you know, basic bettors and pros bet props, but this is their job. Professional bettors, this is their job. So their allocation of their bankroll is much different, and they're approaching props much different. To give you an example, I know a pro here in Vegas. I'll ask him, before a football season starts, I'll say, give me an idea of your props. And he just looks at me and says, dude, I have no clue, because he's just constantly running around town or on his app firing away when he finds a deficiency for the long term. So he can tie up more of his bankroll long term. For example, BetMGM has the Bears win total set. That's a prop. Their season total, they have them set at 8, I believe it was. Circa has the Bears set at 8.5. A pro's going to find the discrepancy there and fire and fire and fire. And at times they'll look at the end of the season, Josh, and they'll add up their tickets. But again, it's an allocation of bankroll and done differently, even though pros and Joes, as we call them, both bet props.
I think that's a great point, Patrick. Yeah, because there's no one way to bet on sports. There are different philosophies, there are different ways, there are different ways to approach it. And a great point there by you, Patrick, is the fact that you have a lot of sharp bettors who really just kind of play the numbers game and look for discrepancies, and they are at the advantage of having a big bankroll. So again, bankroll, the amount of money you've set aside strictly for betting on sports, and they have the luxury of just kind of looking for discrepancies across the market. And you're not going to see huge payouts, but when you extrapolate that over the course of a year, and you want to write them all down, but you can even lose track of them when you have so many of them. That's kind of a grinder's mentality of just looking for inefficiencies, capitalizing late. But when you're an average Joe, or your bankroll is maybe a little bit smaller, and each bet is really important to you, you don't want to go crazy with a million of them. You want to really do your homework and focus on the ones that you really find value overall. So definitely a great point by you, Patrick.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's give some examples. Sometimes the application, you hear the words, but you don't quite understand it. We're going to give you some hard examples when it comes to props, and we're going to use the draft to do so. I think this one's perfect as far as we are always talking about having outs, multiple outs, having different places to get down. It's important because that razor thin margin between a winner and a loser, again, comes down to getting the best number. Well, right now, the number set for quarterbacks in the first round taken is 4.5. Most of us believe it's going to be 4. The juice indicates that. Josh, let's jump into this. 4.5 is the number, but look at the discrepancies in juice. Under, which most people believe, you got to lay a big price. At PointsBet, it's minus 455, under 4.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. At DraftKings, it's minus 560. So again, you got to lay 560 to win $100. And then at FanDuel, it's minus 700 to win 100. Let's go through that prop and kind of help the better understand.
Yeah, so this is a perfect starting off point here, Patrick. Obviously quarterbacks get the most hype and get the most publicity, and it's always a question every year: how many quarterbacks will go in the first round? So I think you can approach this a couple different ways. Number one, you look across the board and you say, okay, it's 4.5 across the board. It's not like there's a 4, there's a 5, and you just have maybe a middling opportunity. It's across the board 4.5. So what does that tell you? Okay, market's in agreement, but look at the juice and look where the liability is. Across the board, they're really juicing up the under. And what that means is that they're making you pay a much higher price to bet the under. Minus 455, minus 560, minus 700 at PointsBet, DraftKings, and FanDuel. So on the one hand, you got to pay a big price, and you got to ask yourself why. Mostly because it seems like that is the smart play. So we do want to caution bettors. Laying a big number like that can be dicey, and really once you get into the minus 1,000 and higher, there's really not much value overall. Like Joe Burrow, he's expected. There's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee, but he is a really big favorite to go first overall, around minus 10,000. Not much value there overall. What I like to look at is, okay, it seems like the market is in agreement. Anytime all the books are on the same page, you got to remember they're taking in different bets from different bettors, different clientele. So if it's a different state, a different location, a different book, and they're all on the same page, that tells you that there's some market agreement. Maybe the sharps are in agreement. What I would look at this is, okay, try to play it out in your head. They're telling you under 4.5 is on the surface the sharp play, laying a higher number. But then look at the over under for specific players. Burrow is a big favorite to go first overall. Tua's over under, and again, you can bet on the over under draft position for pretty much every player. Tua is 4.5, Herbert is 5.5, and Love is 17.5. After that, the next closest ones are Jacob Eason, Fromm, and Jalen Hurts, which are all 47, 60, or 62.5. So you kind of got to weigh it out. If all those over-unders are way in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and yet all the earlier ones are 17.5 or lower, that's kind of telling you that really that under overall is a smart bet, even though you have to lay a lot of money, which is tight up front.
Great job, Josh. Now you're going to hear a lot of terms, buzzwords, value. It's even a joke within the betting community that it's overused. But value, if you hear, Jonathan, a Von Tobel or a Mall, if you hear them say value, it's essentially saying, do you have an edge? Is there an edge there? Is there an implied edge within that value? Now, I bring that up because I want to continue the thread as far as props and quarterbacks. This dance, this is a market. There's no difference between betting sports and betting stocks. There's a risk reward dance that you have to dance every day. And so this one, no value, and this is big risk, no reward as far as odds to be the first pick, right, Josh? That's a prop, but there's really no value here. Let's set that up.
I think it's a great point, Patrick, because if you look again, every prop, in your opinion, should come down to risk first reward. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's kind of a phrase someone told me a long time ago. It always comes to mind. So, for example, Joe Burrow, is he going to go first overall? Again, no locks, no guarantees, but it seems incredibly likely. It would be a huge surprise if he didn't go first overall. So then an average Joe says, Burrow has to go first overall. Okay, let me go bet that. But you got to remember, the odds makers know this, and they're going to make you pay an exorbitant amount in order to bet that pick right there. So again, he's minus 10,000, which is just a ridiculous number overall. So Patrick, if you have 10,000 bucks to lay, and you want to lay that huge number, or you want to win a penny off of a smaller bet, all the power to you. But again, you got to remember, it's a huge risk. And again, there's no such thing as luck. Maybe something crazy happens. Maybe they trade down. Maybe someone else picks them. You would hate to lay a huge number where you're not getting a big payout, and then maybe something happens and you lose it all. So again, even though something seems like a lock, the fact that you have to pay such a high price, there's really no value, and it's all risk, no reward. So as a result, even though it seems like a layup, Burrow number one, it's really not worth betting.
Josh, I really want to circle back to that because it may sound, again, rudimentary or basic to say that, there's no such thing as locks. But new bettors will look at that number. And if they have if they have just this tertiary income that's out of control and they have the money to bet Burrow at one, again, oftentimes there's just nothing there. So, for example, coming back the other way and Chase Young at 16-1, maybe have some fun with it and throw a couple shekels on Chase Young being the number one overall pick. But you're going to get burned. Eventually, if you lay these huge prices, these huge numbers, Josh, the bettor's going to get burned.
Exactly, and that's a big reason why sports books always make so much money in Vegas in the desert. They can build these huge towers because the odds, the betting public is always going to gravitate toward favorites and toward things where the media narrative is telling you this is definitely going to happen. So if you bet that way, if you're constantly betting favorites and laying huge numbers, what you're basically doing is you're risking so much, you're not getting a reward, and then as a result, even though you might win, 9 out of 10 of these type of bets, the one that you lose is going to take away all your winnings. So you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball right off the bat by laying these huge numbers. So try to search for props with a little more value where you're not laying such an exorbitant amount right there.
Yeah, that's what VSiN's here for. Let's just break it down in the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, which Josh wrote. We're trying to decondition you. Betting's about conditioning. You're going to look at a game and always the favorite's going to jump out at you until you get your brain to kind of come back the other way and look at it from a contrarian perspective. You're always going to look at a total and say, for the most part, until you become sharper, you're going to look at it and you say, well, they're going to score a ton of, that's going to go over. No, you got to step back. It's almost deconstruct the idea and the approach when you look at these numbers. And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's what Josh did with his book. I only have a minute here, but the odds to be the Raiders' first pick, that's another example of a prop.
Yeah, exactly. You can look at each team. Where will they go? We'll talk the Giants. We've seen some movement on that prop as well. But you can basically bet on which player will be selected by any specific team. So this is where doing your homework is important. You look at Jerry Judy. He's plus 180. CD Lamb is plus 220. So you have two guys right there who are basically neck and neck. So then you'd want to do some digging. Is there over under position? Maybe one guy's higher than another, or maybe I think they're both 12 and a half, but is the juice leaning one way or another with one guy and the other way with another? So I think the key here is, shopping around, getting the best number, looking for situations where you can identify an edge. If you can't, there's nothing wrong with laying off. And then remember, these limits get raised on these props closer to the draft. So you'll see a lot of
Good
movement
point.
late, and that's when the big sharp money comes in. Those moves are really meaningful late.
That is such a tremendous point by Josh. The limits, how much you can bet on an individual prop, is going to go up as the draft gets nearer. My favorite segment, Bankroll Builder, the relationship between bankroll and prop betting. That's coming up next here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Bankroll Builder coming up next. All right, it's the Everything Guide to Sports Betting here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Coming up next Thursday, don't forget, we've got the best thing we've ever done on the network, the BetCast. We were just talking about props with Josh, how to make money off props. Well, apply it next Thursday right here, VSiN, with the BetCast. Let's get back to it. The author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting is Josh Applebaum, Bankroll Builder. I set it up as the relationship between your bankroll and props, but there's really something to that, right, Josh? Because you're tying money up for the long term.
Exactly. And again, there's a lot of new bettors who really want that immediate instant gratification. It can be a little harder if you're going to bet on a bet that's going to make you wait a little longer to cash, because we all want to be able to know for a fact that night by midnight whether or not we win or not. But don't let that, kind of trap you or make you lay off a bet just because you have to wait a long time, because money's money. And if you can get it later or now, either way, you're still going to get it. So don't let value pass you by. So a couple just, things you want to look at here is number one, remember that props across the market are different at all books. So, you always want to shop for the best number. You want to make sure that wherever because in the end, you're the final arbiter of your bankroll. You decide what you want to bet. But the one thing you can do, no matter what you like, is just try to get the best number, because that's really going to help you maximize your winnings and minimize your losses. So, also looking at where the juice is in agreement, we had the example of the quarterback under 4.5. You're laying kind of a high number, but it does tell you that really there's an agreement across the market that the under has value. I also look at when you have the same a prop, like for example, Isaiah Simmons, the star linebacker out of Clemson. His over under is 6.5 at pretty much every book. But a good example here is at DraftKings, his over under 6.5 is minus 110 both sides. Whereas at FanDuel, his over under is under minus 124, over minus 104. So what that's telling you is if you like the under, bet it at DraftKings because you're only laying minus 110 instead of minus 124. If you like the over, again, you're getting a better number, minus 104 instead of minus 110. So you want to look for discrepancies. They're also middling opportunities. Maybe one book has an over under at 6.5, another has it at 8.5. You can kind of set yourself up for a middle opportunity. But shopping around, getting the best number, looking for discrepancies, and then tracking odds movement. That's really, really big, because if you see a guy his number really, really skyrocket out of nowhere in the middle of the night. You wake up and it's moved. That's kind of telling you that maybe sharps came in hard, caused that number to really rise or move overall. And then definitely deductive reasoning, Patrick. Line these props up next to each other where maybe you can use one prop off the other and kind of get an insight into where some value lies. So good example would be the first running back selected in the draft. You have a head-to-head prop of Georgia's DeAndre Swift minus 200 against Wisconsin's Jonathan Taylor plus 190. So what does that tell you right off the bat? You're not laying a big number. You got a decent payout. That's kind of more of an even coin flip type of prop. But then go to the over under props on both players. Swift's over under position is 26 and a half. Taylor's over under position is 37 and a half. So that kind of tells you, reading the discrepancy here, that Swift is expected to go, 10, 11 picks higher than Taylor. So maybe that, using that draft position tells you, okay, I think laying that minus 200 with Swift is a smart bet because his position is much higher. So again, don't isolate every prop in a vacuum. Play them off each other. Try to get some insight. The books will kind of give you a clue into where some sharp money might lie.
And this slow and steady approach, listen, we understand part of the reason you're watching VSiN, you're reading Josh's book is because you want that rush. Trust me, that rush is going to be implied. There's going to be that rush when it comes to betting, but the instincts will be to get that instantaneous gratification. And again, that'll happen with spurts. But you want to win this thing. These prop bets that we're talking about, which are slow and steady, you got to wait for the prize. That's ultimately how to handle it. Josh?
Yeah, exactly. And another thing is, looking at line movement. We talked about in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo. I remember when Chris Andrews came on the Lombardi line and talked to us, and Patrick basically he was saying, Jimmy Garoppolo's over under passing yards, I think like 250. And then immediately
Right.
sharps were at the door, banging down the door to bet the under. And a couple days later, 250 yards is down to 240 yards. So that's the sort of thing you want to look at, line movement. And again, you want that instant gratification, but the way I look at props is it's kind of offsetting your day-to-day regular betting. If you can be disciplined, if you can isolate some good props overall, whether you have an edge or you're getting a really good number or you have inside insight, use that to kind of put it to the side, make some money, offset your regular betting, and then you'll be happy. Maybe you forget, look at your betting account, and boom, you went up $50 because you placed a good prop 6 months ago.
Great job, Josh. Matt Manocherian, VP of Football and Research for Sports Info Solutions. He's going to be joining us next here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. As we continue to roll along, it's VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. The Everything Guide to Sports Betting here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We welcome you back. Hope you're having a great Friday. I'm Patrick, live in Vegas, of course. Josh Applebaum. Matt Manocherian is going to join us. He did a great job on the Lombardi line. We said we got to have Matt back at Matt Mano on Twitter, VP of Football and Research for Sports Info Solutions. And as we say hi to Matt, I'll let Josh get at you with the philosophical stuff. I want to start here with the quarterbacks. We're talking props. We're talking draft, Matt. 4.5 is the number as far as quarterbacks over under first round. The under's a lock, right? But you have to lay a big price, $500 to $700 to win $100 on that under 4.5 in the quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talking about Jalen Hurts in the first round. I do not believe that at all. I don't see a team valuing him that highly. I just can't see that. I think if you're going to say the fifth guy, it's got to be Jacob Eason, the way that I'd look at it. I don't see anybody spending that kind of value for Fromm, who's probably a backup level player. So I think you'd be betting on Eason, and that's got to be a team that falls in love with his arm and has the ability to ignore the issues that he has processing, because it's scary when you watch him on the field. His ability to get past his first read, it just really isn't there. That said, the arm talent is brings up Marino comparisons.
And yeah, Matt, so much to talk about here. But thanks again for jumping on with us. I wanted to ask you about Tua because you look at it a year ago, it's tank for Tua. The number one pick, Joe Burrow, kind of came out of nowhere, and obviously he's like minus 10,000 to go first overall. But what's your take on Tua? What do you know about his injury concerns? Because we've seen his over under draft position used to be 2.5 a month ago. Now it's up to 3.5, and now it's up to 4.5, where a lot of juice is actually to the over. So your kind of your scouting report on Tua. Do you know where would he fit in terms of a specific team? Fifth overall, sixth, Miami or the Chargers, but kind of just your overall view of Tua and how important those injuries are, and are they scaring away a lot of GMs because he is slipping with his over/under position?
A lot of really good questions kind of baked into there. What I would say is that Tua, for me, I've been saying all year, I thought the lower limit, since the regular season ended, I thought his lower limit was going number 5. I thought he was definitely going to be off the board by the time the Dolphins picked right there, and maybe they would have to move up to get him. But, as Lombardi came in with some obviously well-connected updates, I think he individually moved the line himself with what he had to say about some of the different things with Tua. When I look at it, one thing we do at Sports Info Solutions, we track every injury that occurs throughout the year. So we have injury records for everything from the hip injury that was very scary to smaller things that happen that don't even make it to the injury report, like if he takes a shot to the head or something like that might happen. So we're recording all these things, and we've got an injury expert that reviews all the film on all of these injuries. And what he says is cautiously about Tua. He says, yeah, we have the injury flag on him. We have to. And there's a chance that this hip thing is going to be something that you're going to have to track throughout his career. One name that he brought up, a lot of people use this name to compare Tua on the field, Drew Brees. He was comparing more the injury with Drew Brees' shoulder, where it hasn't been debilitating for the last 15 years for Drew Brees, but he's had to do a lot of maintenance on it, and he's had to make sure that it hasn't popped up and become a recurring issue for him. That's what he thinks the hip issue more becomes. And then again, going back to what Lombardi kind of talked about with regard to Tua, I agree with him in the sense of it's not about the hip. It's not about the ankle. It's not about – these are all – the hip was a big injury. All of the other ones are very small injuries, very little long-term injury risk that come along with them. What you're worried about is the durability. It's the durability of the player that's the big question mark. And for me, it seems ridiculous to drop a player that if other people are evaluating him the same way that I am, which is to say, I think that he's right there with Joe Burrow in terms of talent. If the injury wasn't there, these guys for me are neck and neck in terms of who I'd rather draft to be the signal caller for my franchise. And that's above anybody that came out last year, for example. This is a really good player. It'd be hard for me to believe that just because of the durability concern that we would drop him off because of that, just with what you know about how hard it is to get quarterbacks. And it appears that we have a quarterback here who actually transformed Alabama's offense. Think about all the quarterbacks Alabama's had that weren't Tua. This is a player who's transformed his college offense. Oh, yeah, and that college was Alabama. So I love the player, and I'm a little more bullish on him. And, maybe – and I would never doubt anything that comes out of Lombardi's mouth because I know he's only speaking what he knows and what he believes to be true and what he's hearing. I'm hoping that maybe it's a smokescreen in terms of what it could be for Tua, because I like him coming in at a minimum at that Dolphin spot at number 5.
Great insight there, Matt. And last one for you, quick one. Talking about the Giants at number 4, we've seen a lot of jokes about Dave Gettleman, doing all the draft picks from his office. But we saw at one point it was really kind of a toss-up between Isaiah Simmons and Tristan Wirfs. And over the last 24, 48 hours, we've seen Jedrick Wills really jump up. He's around plus 130, plus 150 favorite now. So just real quick, I know it's a big question, but your take on the offensive lineman, Wirfs or Wills, specifically to the Giants. Any insight there?
I don't like the idea of it. If I'm the Giants and I'm interested in one of these offensive linemen, I've got 4 tackles that are right bunched up with each other in this draft. I'd try to trade down if that was really the direction I'm trying to go. Wills makes sense to me, though. I would have never approved what Gettleman did with the number 6 pick overall last year. I don't like Wills at the number 4 pick, but in terms of having a ready-made right tackle that's going to come in and start for you and be somebody that he can check the box off like he did with Saquon, absolutely, that makes sense to me. So I never want to bet my reason on what I think Dave Gettleman's going to do.
He's still paying for his choices. That's what it comes down to, Matt. I mean, the idea that he drafted a running back 2 overall and then reached on Jones, this could be called a makeup pick, right?
Yeah, it could be a makeup pick, and they're all ridiculous to me because I think if you're doing this the right way, you're drafting by the best player available. If you now Saquon, that's one different thing. He's a transcendent running back talent, and at the same time, we all know about running backs and the questions of spending a high draft pick on them. So he's kind of, but with Daniel Jones, you misinterpreted the market. I think you missed on the evaluation with him. And now I think if you're going to double down with an offensive tackle here instead of getting the best player available, you're compounding mistakes.
Hey, you're the best, man. We're going to do it again. Matt Manocherian, VP of Football and Research for Sports Info. This dude writes a book on the draft that is better than anything that anybody's doing. Don't listen to the mocks. Go to @MattMano on Twitter to get more information. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks so much.
Okay, there he is. I mean, his information is extensive. I encourage you all to check it out. So here's the question on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. What'd you learn today? What'd you learn this week? When we come back, Josh is he's gonna take us to the chalkboard. Okay, he's gonna get the nails out. He's gonna take us to the chalkboard. A pop quiz coming up next here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. We're going back to basics. Remember, you missed the shows? Go sign up to become an insider for free right now. vsin.com. We're coming on back right here on vsin, the Sports Betting Network. Jacob, don't you be laughing at me, you big dog. All right, so I have a question for you. Are you looking for the best damn mock draft on the planet? Well, it's in this week's edition of Point Spread Weekly. Matt Humans did it, and it's awesome. Make sure you get it and see what props he's betting for next week's draft. Also, Steve Makinen will tell you the best way to bet season win totals in the NFL, a prop. That and so much more in this week's edition of Point Spread Weekly. Now's the time. This is the best time to become an insider here at VSiN because for free, okay? A VSiN Plus subscriber for free. You won't have to decide on what to do, whether you pay or cancel, until at least one of the major sports returns. So again, you like mock drafts? You want to become an insider for free? Go to vsin.com/subscribe to sign up. Again, it's free. vsin.com/subscribe to sign up. And while you're there, enter your email address for the daily newsletter, and that'll pop up in your inbox before you even get up. Bill A.D. is on top of that, okay? We welcome you back here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting. Hope you're having a great Friday. My name's Patrick Maher, live from Vegas. The author of the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, which you can find on Amazon all over the place, is Josh Applebaum. Today, Josh Jacobs is getting the notes ready for us as we're going to take a look at the journal. As far as what did we learn today? Let's start with props. That was the emphasis of today's show. We'll simply start with, again, what's a prop?
Yeah, this is like in the SATs when you just write your name down and you get 200 points right off the bat, Patrick. So what is a prop? A prop is it's a propositional bet, also known as just a prop or props in general. And basically what it is, also known as an exotic. If you want to impress someone, you can call it an exotic, but just stick with prop or props in general. But if you look at what is a prop, basically it's any kind of bet that is not your conventional spread, money line, or over under bet, and it's also not tied to the final score of the game. So the most popular ones obviously are the Super Bowl, where props go nuts and there's a million different props. The over under of the national anthem, the color of the Gatorade dumped on the winning coach, will the initial coin flip be heads or tails? But also player props are really important and really popular on NFL Sundays for over under rushing yards for Todd Gurley, or over under receiving yards or passing touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. So remember, props are all over the place. There are different numbers, there are different values, and it's a way to place a smart bet where you may not have an edge on the game, who will win, who will cover, will it go over or under, but instead a specific edge on possibly a player or specific outcome.
By the way, you can check it out, vsin.com. The reason we have the journal, and the next one up in our journal is public bias and props and how that plays. Now, the reason we have a journal that we've set up for the show here, the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, is because we encourage you to write these down in a journal. We encourage you to, essentially, your sports betting and wagering journey should all be in a journal. If you want to go Microsoft Excel, if you're a computer person, that's fine. If you want to write it down like I do, as a matter of fact, I got it right here. Here's my sports betting journal. That's it. So take these tenets that we're teaching you here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, write them down in a journal, and then you make your bullet points as you learn and as you go. Okay, so let's get back to it. Public bias and props betting.
Yeah, and Patrick, that's a great recommendation, by the way, because you learn much more and you're kind of receptive of more learning when you can write things down and you kind of get in the habit of it. So get a journal, write stuff down, make it your own, write in the margins. Great suggestion there. But
I lied.
Yeah.
Hold on. Come back to me, Karina, or whoever's running the cameras. I lied because I actually, here you go. I've got two of them. This is the Applebaum journal, and this is the other journal. Let's get back. Sorry, let's get back to the props and public bias.
No, I love it, Patrick, and that's very important. It's like in the Water Boy, the coach's journal with all his best plays. So hold on to that tight. But yeah, public bias, really important. Just to know that you're operating in a market where the vast majority of bettors are considered the public. You know, when you look at truly sharp, professional, wise guy bettors, you know, it's less than 5%, maybe 2% of bettors are truly professionals who bet for a living. So you got to remember, the public does have an influence, and the odds makers are setting these numbers with public bias in mind because they make up the vast majority of the market. So just in general, again, you don't take it to the bank where every single prop this is true, but generally speaking, you're going to see, you know, regular casual bettors flock to a lot of yeses on props. If it's a yes or no, they're going to flock to a lot of overs, whether it's an over or an under, and they're going to flock to a lot of payouts that really can turn a little bit of money into a lot of money. So your plus 500 payouts, your plus 1,000, turn $100 into 500 or 100 into 1,000. So as a result, you know, the odds makers are going to set these lines with public bias in mind, and as a result, this is kind of give you a little bit of an edge toward betting the nose and betting the unders and laying, you know, not a huge number like Joe Burrow minus 10,000 to go first overall, but maybe a shorter minus 200, minus 300. So just remember, the market overall is leaning with the knowledge of, you know, average Joes are basically overs, yeses, and big payouts, creating value to go the other way.
All right, Josh, number 3 in the journal here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, risk versus reward when it comes to props betting.
Yeah, I think in the end, you always got to ask yourself, what kind of risk am I taking and what kind of reward am I setting myself up for? So again, we go back to the example of Joe Burrow. Is he going to go first overall? Most likely. Again, no such thing as a lock. But is there any real value to betting him at minus 10,000? You have to lay such a huge number that really, yes, is it going to happen? Most likely, but you're not going to get really any payout overall. And also, again, you know, the Patriots were what, a 14, 12-point favorite in the Super Bowl against the Giants in 2008. You said no way in hell could the Giants win, but they did. So crazy things happen, and you would hate to lay a huge minus number where in the end you're not going to get any money out of it. And then in the other flip of the coin, if it loses, you're going to take a huge hit overall. So a lot of new bettors flock to these props that think that they're a layup. And again, most likely they happen, but the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So just be careful of laying these huge numbers. It's really not worth it in the end.
Okay, Josh, number 4 in the journal, the ever important relationship between your bankroll and props.
Yeah, so this is really important. You know, whether you're doing props or your bankroll in general for regular betting, you always want to be disciplined. You always want to try to limit your plays. The more bets that you make, it's going to chip away having to pay the juice overall. But I would look at props as a bonus, a little way to offset your regular day-to-day sports betting. And kind of if you can diversify your portfolio, a lot of really sharp investors talk about.
Okay, we're breaking up a little bit with Josh there, and we're going to get him back on it. Now, here's the most important thing, and I talked about it a little bit earlier when it comes to props and your bankroll. The example I love to use is a professional that I hang out with here in Vegas. He bets so much that generally he can't even keep up with it. He's going to add his tickets up at the end of the night, and when it comes to props betting, and when it comes to this propositional situation, he adds his bets up at the end of a season. I mean, he'll have hundreds and hundreds of prop bets because he continues to make them as he finds a discrepancy. So again, he's going to, because he's a professional, he's going to allocate more as far as his bankroll for the long term. I know a lot of you that are just getting into this, you're not going to want to tie up your bankroll for a 6-month period. We totally get that. You fly to Vegas, you bet on the Bills to win the Super Bowl, you fly back with your ticket. That's still a prop bet. It's just different the way that you approach it psychologically as far as a pro. And, we call them Joes. That term is a little derogatory, but just a bettor that's just getting into it or doing it recreationally. So again, bankroll and props and the relationship. We get back to Josh, and we're going to number 5. This is very important. This is important not just when it comes to prop betting, but it's important when it comes to betting in general, and that is shopping for the best line, Josh.
Exactly. If you take away one thing from maybe all of our shows this week, it's the importance of shopping for the best line, getting the best number. It's not just about making a smart pick and making a pick that hopefully wins, but also what kind of number are you getting? Because if you consistently have the ability to shop around and get a better number and look at different sports books, what they're offering, that's really going to maximize your payouts, limit your losses, and it's going to make a huge difference in the end. So for example, if you're looking at specific prop where an offensive lineman, their over under is maybe 8.5. Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, but yet the juice on one side is leaning the other way. The juice is maybe shorter on another spot, or Isaiah Simmons at 6.5, -110 at one book, but -120 at another. You want to lay that -110, save yourself the juice. And again, shopping for the best line, you got to do a little more work, but it's so worth it because it's really going to save you. It's going to basically increase your payouts, and it's going to make a world of difference overall. So that's the importance of a live odds page in general. But do your homework, go to different shops, and have multiple outs. It's going to make a huge difference over the long run, Patrick.
Yeah, keep that up there, Jacob. Well done, Jacob. Josh's journal. So again, write these down. We explained to you what a prop is, public bias when it comes to prop betting, risk versus reward when it comes to prop betting, props and bankroll. Your relationship with your bankroll, betting in general is just it shines a spotlight on your personality, and you'll see that with your bankroll. Trust me. But props and bankroll, and then also I think Josh put it perfectly. If we've taught you one thing throughout the week here on the Everything Guide to Sports Betting, it is to shop for the best number, shop for the best line. That is the razor thin margin that's going to separate you from becoming a winning bettor and a losing bettor, Josh. It really does come down to pennies. That those numbers and those, as far as finding deficiencies in the number and shopping for the best line, that's the main tenet when it comes to betting.
It is so hugely important, and it's something that might be overlooked for a new bettor, but you're going to learn very quickly what a difference it makes, especially if you can get an extra half point or so. But last one, Patrick, I'll throw at you guys for the weekend here. Document all of your plays, track your plays,
Yes.
Put them in a journal, put them on an Excel sheet. There are apps everywhere where you can submit your plays and track them. And maybe you realize, okay, I'm pretty good at, spreads in the NFL. I'm not great at totals, but boy, I am crushing these over under props for QB yards on Sundays. So learn your strengths, learn your weaknesses. You're going to become a sharper, better overall. And remember, always shop for the best line, document your plays, learn more about yourself as a bettor, lean on your strengths, and work on your weaknesses.
Time for the squad. They do a great job, Josh. Let's give them props. Karina, thank you. Triv, thank you. I guess we'll thank Jacob if we have to. Everybody back at the South Point, thank you so much. Josh, have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
You too, my friend. Great job, everyone behind the board.
vsin.com. Become an insider for free. Remember, we're back at it on Monday. Lombardi line, noon on the East Coast. Everything, 1 on the East Coast. We'll see you then right here on vsin, the Sports Betting Network. Have a great weekend.